Good morning, everyone, or almost afternoon. My name is Dr. Nicola Prendergast-Lucas, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Arizona Global Campus and a session co-chair of the Culture of Care Summit with Dr. Antoinette Vicks. We're pleased to welcome you to this live discussion with alumni presenter Stephen Rex O'Connor. Stephen is a UAGC Alumni of the Year nominee, and he will share his experiences with the culture of care from the student perspective. So please join us in welcoming Stephen Rex O'Connor.
Hello, everybody. My name's Rex. A little bit of my background. I was in the military for just shy of 15 years as an explosive ordnance disposal technician. So I was a bomb tech. And I was deployed a couple of times to both to Iraq. And most of my job, it entailed disarming and diffusing explosive ordnance as well as improvised explosives as well. So that's what I did for a great part of my time in the military. Then the last 5 years, I was working for DevCom out of Picatinny Arsenal, and that's as again, that was as an EOD tech, but that role was more in weapons development and was much more of the business aspect and running the projects as well as conducting research, testing, evaluation, and development. So all of that really kind of led to me branching out and doing something else. My time in the military, during that time, while I was, for the last 10 years, I was also going to the University of Arizona Global Campus. I got my bachelor's in organizational management. It took a little while. By the time I was, let's see, it's in 2021 is when I first got my BS, or I'm sorry, my BA. And then I continued on and got my MBA just last year. In January was when I had earned that. And all of that really kind of translated and helped me during that time at DevCom. I was able to really use the experiences that I had in UAGC to develop my reporting capabilities. I also was able to implement a lot of that stuff in my finances into tracking and managing the finances within my organization. And then as I was looking to separate and leave the military, found a position where I'm currently at with Leidos as a project manager. I'm now, instead of working for the Army directly as a serviceman, I'm now a contractor for Leidos, and I'm supporting the other side of the fence, as it were, for the Army, the Air Force Research Laboratory out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So a lot of the same skills that I developed with the help of UAGC, and then I translated those into my time as a soldier through DevCom. And then now I'm still utilizing those same skills, just on a much more business-oriented aspect for Leidos. So I'm managing projects for the Air Force and trying to build up the Air Force's research facilities. So along those aspects, I found that being a leader, I've led and trained and led dozens of soldiers, and because the EOD is really a small community, there's a single team for the long time was just 2 people, and they would just get pushed out to fill an entire area or area of operations for a battalion. So just 2 people would support, it's like 300 people in an area. And so a lot of what I did was really kind of building up an individual kind of relationships with my team member, as well as interfacing with colonels and generals to provide them the support that they need. So a lot of my experience in the military has always been communication and collaboration, providing support to everybody around me. And so when it came also with UAGC, with the pillars of care, I've also noticed that there's a huge, everything kind of translates. between just communication and caring about those around you and being intent and taking the time to really help those that you can. So my greatest aspects or my greatest takeaways with UAGC was actually from my advisor. I had a fantastic advisor throughout my bachelor's program. She was very, very keen on making sure that I was starting things on time. We were very good at communicating and over communicating with each other to ensure that the process was going, very seamlessly. And I'm sure everybody kind of has a story when it comes to their bachelor's degree. I felt that all of my core classes, that's really where you start getting into the things that you're most interested about. So I really enjoyed all of my core classes, which ended up leading me to furthering my education into my MBA. And then from there, I was assigned another advisor. And again, it's throughout the whole UAGC, they just build a culture of making sure that they're collaborating, communicating, and providing the best support they can to the students. And I really did feel that from a student aspect. There was even a specific time where I had an issue between traveling because obviously in the military I traveled quite a bit for testing with projects and also for running operations and missions. So there was a time where I had an issue with my scheduling as well as with a course, and unfortunately I wasn't able to drop the course right on time. I think I missed it by a day or two was the deadline, and I just had to reach out to my advisor. She instantly set me up on the path. Now she didn't have the authority, right, to just completely back me out of it and fix the situation, but she was able to streamline the process and really kind of take care of me, understand what the problem was, so that I could empower myself to fix those situations. And then everything went through the process perfectly the way that she had said and instructed, and I was able to not only start the next course, continue on, and not lose much in my schedule, but to also I was even refunded back the money that for the course that I had had to drop. So I have a great appreciation for my advisors, for the faculty, and for the administrators within UAGC, and it's really helped me become successful inside and outside of the military, and I'm translating those same skills to my operations and normal day-to-day life now that I'm a civilian again. So it's kind of where I come from. Really look forward to working and communicating, collaborating, and taking care of those those around me. And that I know that what you put out there really kind of comes back to you tenfold. So as long as you make everybody else your focus, it's gonna be you'll be taken care of as well by everybody else. So that's really kind of a lot of my story when it comes to UAGC. There were definitely issues going to school in the military, as well as conducting operations and missions. For instance, EOD was a very time intensive career field. So it's we operated also on a not just a deployed but a stateside mission set. So every day, even if you're redeployed, if you're on your home station, we're still running missions. You get a call from anywhere on base from the military police, the range control, as well as technicals would come out from, let's say, like Redstone Arsenal would come out and ask us to do other kind of testing and evaluations, or even outside of the normal military scope. I would get phone calls from the FBI, the ATF, as well as local police, and we would respond off base and on base to any kind of explosive hazards. Now, what that meant was that I was quite regularly, quite frequently, constantly on call. So I had 2 cell phones with me at all times. At any moment, I would get a call and have to go and respond. So it made my scheduling and for planning very kind of difficult. But the benefit to UAGC of having a mobile classroom, being able everything being more focused on empowering students to learn on their own. I was really able to take that, build and become very good at writing, and build upon those skills to kind of fill in the my schedule so that I was still able to advance my education and also eventually my career. So, for instance, my day-to-day schedule while I was stationed in El Paso, Texas, I would wake up really early. I'd start working out, because you got to stay fit for the military. I'd start working out around 4:30, and then I'd have to meet up with the rest of my unit at 6:30, continue physical training, and then at 9 o'clock would be our normal duty day, which would run until typically about 5 o'clock. Or, however, many situations, because I'm on call, I would more often than not leave until 7 o'clock at night. I mean, there were several times that I would get a phone call in the middle of the night and just have to go. So my days were traditionally about, very, very, very early in the morning to very, very late. And then on top of that, once I got home, I would still have to do obviously all my homework and all my research in order to continue my education. So I wasn't getting done with schoolwork until about 10 or 11 o'clock. Try to get 5 hours of sleep and then do it all over the next day. And that was usually my routine for several years until I went to work for DevCom, where it was a little bit more flexible. However, it just had to play more with planning out my schedule. Whereas while I was in El Paso or even Colorado, when I was on call there, it would take up most of my time as well as with training. Whereas in Picatinny Arsenal, I was able to forecast my schedule quite a bit more. Even though I was still on call, the number of incidents that I was responding to was drastically less than most areas. So really just very appreciative of my experience within the University of Arizona Global Campus. Very appreciative of the care that I got from my advisors and the faculty. And I can't stress enough how great it is for anybody else that's looking to advance their education and to provide, transfer those things into their professional lives as well. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to ask me based off of those experiences that I had? No?
Well, hi, Rex. Thank you for sharing your story. It's very helpful. I am the program chair for our entry point course, Gen 101. I don't know if you ever took that course or not, but we get all of the students. So our students are not, they haven't, started their major courses yet. So I'm always curious about what kind of experience. Sometimes my military students will tell me that this course feels like I've already done this before. And I'm wondering what could we do to kind of maybe connect what we know are the important things they need to learn before they start, their major program. Like what was something that what is an activity? We do a SWOT analysis, we do SMART goals, things like that. But is there something else that we maybe could incorporate that would make this more applicable to what they're experiencing?
So, tell you the truth, I'm really a big fan of the SWOT analysis. It's, I think, highlighting that, and it might seem a little mundane, especially especially through the course of my education. I have no idea how many I've done based on different aspects, but doing a SWOT analysis just on yourself, right, and going forward is really a great way to identify your short-term and your long-term goals. So kind of the way that I learned it in the military, your short-term goals are typically around 6 months, right? And then there's your medium-term goals. We kind of created this gap between the 6 months and then our long-term goals, which is 5 years. So you want something that's in between, but it's hard to identify that, especially for service members. Most of my experience, service members are really kind of given a roadmap per se of what their career is going to look like. And that doesn't translate very well to everybody, because most of the time people, they may not like the thing that they're doing, or they, on top of it, they may not be aware of all of the opportunities within even just the military. So doing a SWOT analysis, like you said, may really putting more emphasis on and just saying, don't just come up with your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Really focus on your opportunities, because there are so many out there. There's so many different opportunities. Like, just because you're not aware of them, it's because you're not really doing the research into what opportunities are really out there. And trying to maybe I think that this could really translate to not just into service members, but all students, right? We can really like talk to people that are already employed. They can go and talk to their employers. They can talk to their first line supervisors, and they can find out the track that they're on and what they're really kind of looking at going forward, what's going to be happening to them. But not just that, they can also ask, what greater opportunities are there? And more often than not, their first line supervisor won't know. But by starting to ask those questions, it'll lead them to their next chain in command, their next boss is their boss's boss, who will then give them that information. So somebody will know the answer. They just have to keep asking, right? It's the 5 whys. You just got to keep digging, and that'll find your root cause, and you'll eventually figure out where you want to go. But you really do need to put forth the effort. You only get out of it what you put into it.
Thank you. We've heard that in 2 sessions today. You only get out what you put in. In one of the other student panels, the students said the same thing. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you for your service, but also thank you for this great session. Thank you.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions?
Hey, Rex. I'm Warner. I work in employer outreach, obviously, and I'm a 10-year Air Force veteran, military photographer for 6 years and recruiter for 4. So
awesome.
Since we have, much like yourself, over 6,000 military affiliated students that attend, from everything from active duty, guard, reserve, you name it, dependents, DoD civilians, transitioning military veterans, the whole gamut. And I speak to that a lot when I go to meetings and things like that, and I speak to students. And I know you're working at an amazing company, Leidos. We all know who Leidos is if you're in the military, SAIC, Leidos, all of that. So how was it for you to get into the position that you have? Because obviously there's so many avenues out there for our students where they can do skill bridge, they can do a bunch of things. So how did it work for you? Or did you decide that contracting when you were, how early did you, sorry, I have like a million questions to ask you, but I'm just trying to get an overall thought process from you to share with our faculty and staff here at the same time, because I think this is a great way to communicate this, so that much like the previous question that was asked, where you are today, how you got there, what recommendations would you give to those that are attending military affiliated students at UAGC?
So a company like Leidos, I think it's a lot of it is very like engineer based and very technical based. And same thing with, let's say like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or any of those. But there are opportunities within those companies that they have their own internships. It's difficult kind of, especially if the more advanced and further you are in your military career, it's hard to take those steps back to become an intern, especially since, for instance, Lockheed Martin and like Raytheon, they have their own skill bridge programs there. I had trouble and issues trying to work and deal with those. But there's a lot of other companies like Leidos, for instance, did not really have a skill bridge program. I think that me personally, I've been trying to still like talk to HR and try to build that up, because if they had a greater understanding that they could bridge that gap of, they can have, an internship for somebody that has a wealth of experience and really kind of come over it'll definitely facilitate that entire process. And I think a lot of it too comes down to having to explain that even as a potential hire, right? So I personally, I started looking at separating from the military. Okay, so I officially separated in October. The military's kind of changed its policies for SkillBridge in the last year. So it used to be that you would have, up to 6 months to do your SkillBridge, depending on your rank now and how much time you have in the military. It's actually down to 3 months. So it benefits people that are on their first term of service. So they're only been in for a few years. It definitely benefits them. They can get out 6 months earlier to try to find a position. In which case, if your students are one of those people, then all better for them, that they're more easily positioned to slide directly into like an internship or a kind of a beginning level, and then it'll be real easy transition to go back. For those of us like myself that were in for quite a while, it's much more challenging to try to get all that done in just 3 months. So I think a lot of it really comes down to, in the end, just making sure that you really kind of communicate with the recruiters. And even if you can't directly talk to the recruiters, any type of way to like talk to the HR department of any kind of company that you're interested in and explain how the process works for the military with SkillBridge. I think that's the best route to go, because a lot of companies, I mean, it's not their job to keep track of the military and their regulations, but they can definitely still take advantage of these programs that the military has. So it's every person needs to kind of understand what the military allows you to do, and then be your own salesman, and then bring that over to whatever company that you're interested in moving into, to try to help pitch yourself as a candidate. That's kind of the best way to go about it. And that's kind of how I did it. Unfortunately, I couldn't get them to rewrite the requisition for a SkillBridge program. So I ended up having to wait a specific extra amount of time before I could go on terminal leave and then move over. So a lot of it depends on luck, unless you can start really early and start educating those companies that you're trying to move into. I hope that answers your question. Does that help you?
No, that was great. That was great. I really appreciate that, Rex. And one other question, may I reach out with you in LinkedIn to connect with you? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for this great meeting. We really appreciate all that information. It's really great.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to ask me about? I mean, even as far as like Leidos goes, it's a growing company. And as far as my time in the military, there's a lot of changes going on in the military these days. I'm sure everybody knows. It was even just my time, right? I was in for what seems like a long time, but really it's a snapshot in the length of the military. So when I first came in, there's so much that's changed just from the time that I came in the very beginning of 2010 to the end of 2024. So for instance, there was like the don't ask, don't tell. There was you weren't able to officers and enlisted were not able to hang out or talk, like really kind of talk to each other. No fraternization policy is what it was called. So it really stopped and limited a lot of people from communicating with each other and talking to each other. And then all of a sudden, inside of 3 or 4 years, everything kind of changed. They repealed don't ask, don't tell. And then all of a sudden, officers and enlisted were able to start actually talking and communicating, building friendships. And then it started going further, and the military tried changing its PT program, and even just the uniforms themselves. I had 3 separate Class A uniforms from the time that I was in. So it was changing every 3.5 years on average. So it's constantly moving, constantly evolving organization, and which is really kind of weird to think of. Like most of the time we think of the military as something that's such a long organization. Its lifetime is so vast that there wasn't much change over the course of, the last 200 years. So that's not really the case. The military's, it's really just treated, it's kind of like a giant social experiment. They just do everything. It's constantly learning and shifting and changing to see what works and what doesn't work. And typically, because the leadership moves and shifts as often as it does, there's like a short-term memory on that. A lot of people forget what did work, and we'll retry those same things. So I'm sure a lot of service members have similar stories where a command team comes in, changes everything because they think that change is the right course of action, which it is. There's nothing wrong with change. However, they typically change it to something that isn't working, only to redevelop the things that they were already doing going back to that. So everybody sees the same thing over and over again on a long enough timeline. But what it does is it does advance and enhance our capabilities, and it refines those actions. So even though we might revert back to old policies and procedures, it's still sharpened and honed to its best possible position. So that's kind of my outlook on how all that kind of operated.
So crazy question, if I may, since Leidos was, I believe, a breakoff of Science Applications International Corporation, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So I know I'm not being a doomsday person here. I'm just saying, with all the military things that are being reviewed and all that, and contracting and all that, how does that work? Are you able to then, if you decided you wanted to move to SAIC to apply to roles there, how would that work, Rex? I'm just sharing that for all of us here for future UAGC graduates, military affiliates.
Right, so there is it shouldn't be too difficult, right? So I was fortunate, right? And so in my position at DevCom, I was obviously privy to weapons technology and advancement. However, me transferring to Leidos is a different branch altogether. And then on top of that, due to the fact that I was enlisted, even senior enlisted, right? Even if, let's say, I was the sergeant major of the Army, I might have, a colonel or a general's ear. It doesn't mean I have the authority to actually implement, contracts. I might start off. So I've written, I've been a contracting officer in the past, let's say for while I was deployed. However, I'm still building the contract. I'm not the approving authority when it comes to contracts. So if you have students that are enlisted and they're looking at trying to transition and they're afraid of that transition process, I'm going to say like 95% of the time, they're not going to be in a position that's going to really conflict with their new position of requesting contracts. Now, there are certain situations, like I do have friends that were working in some areas that were, would write requirements. And those requirements would then, if it was relayed and written specifically to promote a certain company or product, then that's obviously it's against the law. It's highly frowned upon. And then, especially if they then transitioned out of the military, then got hired on for that company, that's against the law. So there are some positions where enlisted personnel could be in those positions, but it's just be cognizant that you stay ethically, ethically clear. Keep that in your mind, that and uphold those morals. And if you just transition to different sectors, different areas where you weren't affecting those policies or those projects, then there's really no conflict of interest in those areas.
Thanks, Rex.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. And I think we're getting close on time. Is there anybody else that has a short question?
We probably have about 30 seconds. All right. A big thank you to Rex O'Connor for his time and insights today. Thank you so much. That was a fabulous talk.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.